The son I sacrificed everything for drained my retirement savings to pay for his wife's cosmetic surgery and didn't leave a single dollar for my heart medication. He thought I was powerless. He was wrong. And very soon, he got a shocking surprise. My name is Martha Vance, and for 32 years, my life was measured in the scent of dry erase markers, the hum of fluorescent laboratory lights, and the chaotic energy of teenagers who thought they knew everything. At Benjamin Franklin High, they called me the Iron Lady. It wasn't because I was mean, it was because I was precise. Chemistry doesn't allow for almost or maybe. If your measurements are off by a fraction of a milligram, the whole experiment fails. I lived my life by those same rigorous standards. When my husband Greg passed away from a sudden pulmonary embolism, David was only 6 years old. I remember sitting at our small kitchen table, staring at a stack of bills and a single Social Security check, realizing that the balanced equation of our lives had just been decimated. That night, I made a silent vow to my sleeping son. He would never feel the cold breath of poverty. To keep that promise, I became a machine. I was the first one in the school parking lot at 6:45 a.m. and the last one to leave. I taught honors chemistry during the day, ran the tutoring center until 6 p.m., and spent my summers teaching remedial science in sweltering classrooms without air conditioning. I skipped vacations. I wore the same navy blue blazer for 7 years until the elbows were shiny and thin. I drove a beige Toyota Corolla that groaned every time I hit 40 miles per hour. But David had the best of everything. He had the $200 soccer cleats, the latest iPhones, and a college fund that allowed him to graduate from a top-tier university without a single penny in student loans. I wasn't just a mother. I was his benefactor, his safety net, and his biggest fan. I thought I was building a legacy of love and stability. I didn't realize I was actually raising a man who saw my sacrifice not as a gift, but as an entitlement. I had spent 30 years teaching him how to react to elements, but I never taught him the value of the gold he was born into. When David met Chloe, I truly wanted to be the supportive mother-in-law you only read about in Hallmark cards. Chloe was vibrant, polished, and had a smile that looked like it belonged on a billboard. But beneath that veneer, I noticed things. She never looked me in the eye when she spoke about their future. She only looked at the things I could provide. When they got engaged, I didn't hesitate. I went to my safe and pulled out the $85,000 I'd been growing in a high-yield account since David was in middle school. For the wedding and a down payment, I told them. I'll never forget the way Chloe snatched the check. No hug, no "thank you, Martha." Just a comment about how it might barely cover the floral arrangements she wanted. A year after the wedding, David came to me with a look of feigned concern that I now realize was carefully rehearsed. We were sitting on my back porch, the same porch where I'd helped him build his first volcano for the 3rd grade science fair. "Mom," he started, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "You're getting older. That dizzy spell you had last month really spooked me and Chloe. What if something happens and you're in the hospital? I need to be able to handle the bills, talk to the doctors, and make sure your mortgage stays current." He handed me a set of documents, an emergency power of attorney. He told me it was just a safety net, a break glass in case of emergency measure. Because he was my son, my only child, I didn't call my lawyer. I didn't even put on my reading glasses to check the fine print. I signed it because I thought I was entrusting him with my care. I didn't realize I was handing a starving man the keys to the grocery store. I felt a sense of relief, thinking my son was finally stepping up to protect me. In reality, he was just making sure that when the time came to bleed me dry, he wouldn't even have to break a sweat. The realization didn't hit me like a lightning bolt. It felt more like a slow, freezing drip. It was a Tuesday afternoon at the CVS on 5th Street. I'd walked there, enjoying the crisp air, to pick up my monthly prescription for lisinopril. It's a standard heart medication. Nothing fancy, just the thing that keeps my blood pressure from skyrocketing. The pharmacist, a young man named Leo who had been one of my students years ago, slid the bottle across the counter. "That'll be $42, Mrs. Vance," he said with a smile. I swiped my Chase debit card. Declined. I frowned, thinking I'd hit the wrong button. I swiped again. Declined. That's impossible, I whispered, my heart starting to do that heavy, thudding dance in my chest. Try it as credit, Leo. He did. The machine let out that harsh, buzzing rejection sound. Leo looked down, unable to meet my eyes. I'm sorry, Martha. It says insufficient funds. I felt a hot flush of embarrassment creep up my neck. I paid with the crumpled $20 bills I keep in my kitchen jar for the gardener and walked home in a daze. My mind was racing. My pension check had deposited on the 1st. My Social Security was automatic. I should have had over $50,000 in that liquid account alone. When I got home, my fingers were fumbling so badly I could barely type my password into the laptop. I logged into my Vanguard retirement portal and my Chase checking. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. 4 transfers, $10,000 here, $12,000 there, all of them labeled Electronic Transfer D. Vance. $42,600, gone. I didn't call him. I didn't want to hear a lie over the phone. I drove straight to David and Chloe's new modern farmhouse. I still had the spare key they'd given me, though I rarely used it. As I stepped into the foyer, the house smelled of expensive candles and fresh paint. I heard Chloe's high-pitched giggle coming from the master suite upstairs. I walked up the stairs, my soft-soled shoes silent on the plush carpet. The door was ajar. Chloe was sitting at her vanity, her face covered in surgical tape and yellowing bruises. She looked like a car crash victim, but she was smiling at her reflection. "David, look at the jawline," she cooed. "The surgeon was right. It changes my whole profile. It was worth every cent." David was leaning against the doorframe, a glass of scotch in his hand. "I told you I'd take care of it, babe. It's just money." "But won't your mom notice the dip in her account?" Chloe asked, her voice dropping slightly. David chuckled, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Please. She's 72 and barely knows how to use an ATM. She's probably forgotten she even had that secondary account. Besides, it's basically our inheritance early. She's just sitting on it while we're in our prime. Think of it as a long-term loan she'll never ask back." I stood in the hallway, clutching the banister so hard my knuckles turned white. My son, the boy I'd taught to be honest, the boy I'd protected from every hardship, was standing there justifying theft as an early inheritance while I couldn't even afford my heart pills. The pain in my chest wasn't a medical emergency anymore. It was the feeling of my heart turning into a cold, hard diamond. In chemistry, a catalyst is something that speeds up a reaction without being consumed by it. David and Chloe thought they were the ones in control, but they had just dropped a match into a room full of vapor. I didn't burst through the door. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing my tears. I turned around, walked down those expensive stairs, and drove home in a silence so thick it felt like lead. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the Iron Lady was back. I didn't see a sun. I saw a rogue element that needed to be neutralized. That night, I didn't sleep. I spent the hours between midnight and dawn gathering every lab report of my own, bank statements, the power of attorney documents, and the time-stamped pharmacy rejection. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Arthur Sterling. Arthur was a legendary shark in the legal world and a former student of mine from the late 90s. I'd helped him pass chemistry when he was failing. Now I needed him to help me dissolve a betrayal. "Martha," he said, his voice dropping an octave when I told him the figures. "We're going to do more than just get your money back. We're going to make him wish he'd never learned to count." Step 2 was the sting. I invited David over for tea. I set my phone to record and placed it face down on the lace doily. When he arrived, I played the part of the frail, confused mother perfectly. "David, honey, the bank said I don't have enough for my medicine. I'm so worried I've been hacked." He didn't even flinch. He patted my hand with a smile that felt like a snake's belly. "Don't worry, Mom, the bank system has been glitchy lately. I'll look into it. If some money is moved, it's probably just for a high-interest investment I set up for you. It's for a good cause, trust me." "A good cause?" I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "The best," he lied. That was it. the admission, the intent, the nail. I had the catalyst, and the reaction was officially underway. The climax didn't happen in a dark alley. It happened in the bright, sterile, fluorescent light of a courtroom and the glass-walled offices of Sterling and Associates. David arrived at his brokerage firm on a Tuesday morning, probably dreaming of his next promotion, only to be served with a civil summons for fraud, conversion, and elder financial abuse in front of his entire department. In court, the atmosphere was as heavy as a storm front. Chloe sat in the front row, her face finally healed from the surgery I had unwittingly funded, looking horrified as Arthur Sterling played the recording of our tea time conversation. When David's own voice echoed through the room, lying about investments while he knew I was skipping heart medication, the judge's face turned into a mask of pure disgust. The ruling was a total annihilation. The judge didn't just order the return of my 40 tars of $600. He added punitive damages and held David personally liable for every cent of my legal fees. Because David had already liquidated the funds into Chloe's face and their mortgage, the court ordered a mandatory 25% wage garnishment for the next decade. But the real chemical burn came a week later. David's firm, which has a zero-tolerance policy for financial dishonesty, terminated him immediately. Without his six-figure salary, the modern farmhouse went into foreclosure within months. Chloe, realizing the early inheritance was actually a life sentence of debt, filed for divorce shortly after. As for me, I revoked the power of attorney and moved my life to a small, sun-drenched villa in Sedona. I sit on my balcony every morning, my heart steady and my bills paid by a trust David can never touch. I spent 30 years teaching children that every action has a reaction. It took a while, but I think David finally learned the lesson. Class dismissed. My story is a chilling reminder of how easily trust can be weaponized by the people we love the most. But I want to hear from you. At what point do you think my son lost his way? And do you think the lesson I gave him was too harsh or just right? Let me know in the comments below. It's important for me to say that this story is a dramatization created for societal reform and educational awareness. I chose to share what happened to expose the dark realities of elder abuse and financial betrayal so you can protect your loved ones and never repeat these mistakes in your own life. In the end, I've learned that karma has a way of balancing the scales, and justice always finds its way to the truth. If you found value in my story today, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to join this community for daily stories of justice and reform.